Bosley. Alderman Ortman.
Present.
Alderman Moore. Vice Chairman Vaccaro.
Present.
Alderman Cone.
Present.
Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Tyus.
Present.
Chairman Conway.
Present.
5 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. This morning, the process that we're going to have, oh, yes, he can sign in. The process we'll have this morning is that I assume since Alderman Ogilvie has already assumed authority over the podium, he'll go first because he's the sponsor of the resolution. And then each of the speakers will have 4 minutes or so to convey their thoughts. If you're pro or con on this issue, it's always better for us not to hear the same litany over and over again, but to give us the other perspectives from your position. So I'm going to recognize Alderman Ogilvie on resolution number 99.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to speak for a little bit about Resolution 99. As I'm sure you know, Resolution 99 expresses the opinion of the Board of Aldermen on Amendment 7. Amendment 7 is a constitutional amendment in Missouri. It's a 0.75% sales tax increase that would increase funding to MoDOT. As you all know, this will be on the ballot August 5th. The whole state will be voting on it. And so it's an issue that could have a large effect on the city of St. Louis and on our residents. So I think it's appropriate, given that it's also kind of a complicated issue, that the Board of Aldermen, if it chooses to, stakes a position out on how it feels this will affect the city and residents going forward. So I want to offer, I think, my explanation of why Amendment 7, if it passed, would be bad for the city of St. Louis in particular. And I think to understand that, you have to go backwards a little bit and think about St. Louis 40 or 50 years ago, before a lot of the highway construction happened in the region. St. Louis was a place with a lot more people living in it, and the region pursued highway construction with a little bit more gusto than most other regions, and the result is that 40, 50 years later, we've had a dramatic population loss. We have huge vacancy issues. We have a lot of real estate that at this point essentially has no value. It's in fact a liability in some cases. We've built basically more highway miles per person in the region than any other place in the country. So St. Louis and Kansas City are actually number 2 and number 3 for the amount of highways per person in the region. This is a statistic that shocked even me a little bit. If you go back to 1970, the combined population of St. Louis City, St. Louis County, and St. Charles was 1.66 million people. Fast forward to 2012, population is 1.67 million people. So in 42 years, a time when the country grew by about a third, the core of the St. Louis region grew by less than 1% in terms of population. But during that time period, we pursued tons of highway construction projects. So now we have tons of highway miles, but no more people. We've built the highway system we need. In fact, we've built more than the highway system we need for the region. And that's not, the consequence of that is that for a generation or more, we have really damaged our city in particular. And, there are real financial consequences to that. You think about, we'll never know the cumulative wealth that's been taken from people, from property owners in St. Louis, by devaluing their property. When a region sprawls as quickly as the St. Louis region has sprawled, we open up more land for residential and commercial development, you devalue what people already own. And that's the property of our constituents. It's worth less than it should be because of the transportation policy for the last 40 or 50 years in Missouri. So in my mind, that needs to change. We can't keep doing the thing we've been doing for 40 or 50 years. It's not working for our city. Now, some people are going to tell you that Amendment 7 is that change, that's the real pivot in terms of transportation policy. But I don't think the numbers bear that out. So we've got MoDOT's commissioners in Jefferson City have approved the statewide project list now for this almost $6 billion in new spending for MoDOT. And the money that would go to the St. Louis region, only 5.5% of the money would go to transit. So when folks tell you this is a big pivot in terms of policy, I don't think the numbers support that claim. And more than half of that 5.5%, I think you have to point out, is not even guaranteed. MoDOT's saying, we will fund a portion of some transit projects, but locally you're gonna have to come up with most of the money, particularly for the streetcar. There's a streetcar project on the project list for St. Louis, but MoDOT would fund less than 10% of that streetcar project, while at the same time funding 100% of highway expansions outside of 270. So you look at that on balance, is that a good thing for the city? I don't think it's gonna be. It's also important to recognize that there's not a great transit project on the list. If you ask, and people have been asked over and over again, what St. Louis residents think is the highest priority, or what should be the highest priority transit project for the region, they consistently say build north-south Metrolink line. That's not on the project list. In fact, because of the way funding these things works, that pretty much takes that off the table for about 20 years, because this is what MoDOT's going to do for the next 10 years, and if there's no funding for that, Metro locally doesn't have the money to build it, there's no state funding for it, we're going to be thinking about how to get the money in 2025 to build it in 2035, so that's a long way off. That means no substantial Metrolink expansion for probably 2 decades. So I think the other thing we have to recognize is that, if you ask St. Louis residents, tell me what the region's biggest problem is, or tell me what the city's biggest problem is. What do you wish the state would focus on? If we have more money, if we're going to raise taxes for one thing, should that be roads? I think resoundingly people are going to answer that question no. They're going to say things like public safety, education, healthcare. Those things are all far more important, I think, to the St. Louis resident than paying more money to expand the region and the state's highway system. And this is about expanding the highway system. If you look at the St. Louis region project list, all of the most expensive projects are adding lanes to highways outside of 270. 55, 44, 94, 70, 64, all have lane additions on the project list that MoDOT has approved. And they're all 100% funded. So that means we're continuing this pattern, 50 years of sprawl, devaluing real estate, moving people away from the city, and letting the city then incur the costs of what happens after people leave. And you guys know that there are substantial costs to that. We're probably going to ask for a tax increase in November that's partially going to pay to take down vacant buildings, to demolish vacant buildings in the city. Why are they vacant? They're vacant because transportation policy has moved people out of the city. So we're going to ask people for a tax increase to build more highways in August, and then we're going to ask them for another tax increase in November to tear down the empty buildings that those highway expansions have left behind. It's not smart policy for the city of St. Louis anymore, and I think we need to essentially put our foot down and say, we want a better deal. We want policy that actually works for the city, from the state, and we want it to be real. And this is, a highway expansion bill that throws a few scraps at other modes of transportation, on balance, is just not, it's not the policy pivot we need to see from the state. So what would be good for the city of St. Louis? Honestly, what would be good is, as long as there's not population growth in the region, and there's not within those 3 counties, why are we adding more highway miles? Let's maintain the system we have, which MoDOT admits they have the money to do. They don't dispute that. But let's stop, until the region starts growing, let's stop adding new roads, because there are fewer drivers now. There's fewer cars registered in the state of Missouri. People are driving fewer miles. Those are stories that MoDOT's not going to tell you. They don't get told very much, but they keep the data on this. We have 8 years of consecutive declines in the number of miles people are driving. Why would we raise taxes, spend hundreds of millions of dollars on highway expansions when people are driving no more than they were driving in the mid-1990s? It's tough for me to think that that is a smart policy. I think you add up all those things. There's going to be, I think, some specious claims about job creation and safety. You do the math. There's no study that proponents of this can cite that says how many jobs will be created. I've heard the director of MoDOT use 3 different numbers in the last 2 months. The amendment says safety projects will be prioritized. If you go through the list, and we've gone through it, only 13% of the projects are really about safety. The fact is that driver behavior, drunk driving, texting, driving while you're tired, those are the things that really cause accidents. For the most part, it's not, rebuilding highways that makes them safer. It's changing driver behavior that makes driving safer. So, in summary, MoDOT has no immediate funding crisis. We can come up with a better policy for the city of St. Louis, and I think we have to, because if we continue down the same road that we've been on, we're going to get the same results, and that's continuing to see more vacancy, property devalued, and the city really in a tough position. It's, as you guys know, it's hard to deal with these issues when you don't have a stable population, and we should really, I think, demand that transportation policy starts to correct the problems it has caused for the city of St. Louis for 50 years. So with that, I think it's entirely appropriate that the Board of Aldermen goes on record saying this is a bad deal for St. Louis city voters, and we would urge them on August 5th to vote against Amendment 7. Thank you.
Are there questions? All right, thank you. I'm sorry about that. Excuse me. The first speaker speaking on behalf of resolution number 99, Eric Shelquist. Eric, when you come up, if you just tell me your name and where you live and who you work for, and have at it.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
I live at 5157 Cates in the 18th Ward, and I'm a student worker at Harris-Stowe State University here in town. And I would ask you to support Resolution 99. Scott just said a lot of wonderful points. I couldn't say it all better myself. except that I would add that, like, the conversation that MoDOT is having about transportation and roads throughout the state, they seem to be just stuck in this paradigm of more and more highway funding being the most efficient way to go, and they've admitted that their funding is not as stable as it used to be. The gas tax is not providing that revenue, and so with a failure to consider that an increased fuel tax would be a better way to fund roads, and a failure to think more about alternate modes of transit and transportation that is built more on a human scale instead of the large interstates and highways with so many lanes. I think with that failure to have that conversation and have more of a discussion about that, that's a major flaw in that. So I would just urge you to please vote yes on Resolution 99, and so we can show the city that, put the city on record for that.
Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew Podhast. He would be speaking against Resolution 99. And again, Andrew, if you could tell us who you are, where you live, and
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Andrew Pottis. I work for H&TB Corporation, located in Metropolitan Square. We've been in business in the city of St. Louis since 1999. I currently live in Webster Groves, Missouri. I'm a former city resident in the Southampton neighborhood. First, I'd like to address Scott's comments regarding that the majority of the funds will be spent outside of 270 Loop. If you look at the project list, that is a false statement. While the St. Louis region list includes Jefferson, Franklin, St. Charles, St. Louis City and County, 70% of the funds will be spent inside the 270 Loop when you include the BRT projects. That's $1.04 billion of the $1.48 billion.
I don't know what BRT is.
That's a bus rapid transit,
Okay.
the I-64 line. So that's my first point I would like to make. My second point has to do with job creation and safety. Since 2008, MoDOT's programs dropped to nearly in half. During that time, our office, located in the city of St. Louis, has seen a reduction of engineering employees of approximately 30 full-time employees. These are high-quality jobs, college-educated, STEM jobs, things that the region would like to bring to St. Louis. Not only has that affected the lives of our employees and our company, it's also affected the city of St. Louis. As everyone realizes, we all pay a 1% earnings tax. That revenue from our company alone is over $20,000 a year. There are over 20 civil engineering companies located in the city of St. Louis. They have all seen staff reductions since the MoDOT program has turned down. Amendment 7 would return the program nearly to the 2008 levels. Regarding safety on the roads, you have to look no further than going to SaveMoLives.com, where it states facts regarding guard cable and things deployed on our roads and the number of fatalities that have dropped. MoDOT has seen a drop in fatalities 5 years in a row, and I don't think that anyone can argue that a road with a shoulder is not safer than a road without a shoulder. And there are several shouldering jobs located in rural areas in Missouri. The other point I would like to make is in the resolution that it states that the portion of the sales tax increase paid by the citizens and businesses in the city of St. Louis will be greater than the portions of expenditures to be made in the city. First of all, it has been stated that $234 million will be generated by the city of St. Louis for the tax, and will only get $200 million back. The first point on that is that according to the latest CBC's annual report, at least 12% of the revenues generated by the city of St. Louis is from visitors. That would nearly make those numbers identical. Further, the total coming to the city of St. Louis, when you include Lambert Airport and the bus rapid transit lines that bring people in and out of the city's businesses, that the total on the project list is actually close to $270 million, exceeding the 234 estimated to be generated by the city. Further, the city can expect to receive funds to make improvements to the city's infrastructure with the additional 10% of the Amendment 7 money that is going to cities and counties. That is an additional $20 million that the city can use for BPS projects. This is a huge deal for the city, which for the last several years has been strapped to even provide the local match of federal funding for your projects. This money can be used for that federal match. If that money was used for federal funding match, the 80-20 ratio, that could be nearly $100 million for city projects that are the city's priorities. Thank you.
Thank you. Just 1 second. Are there any questions? Oh, excuse me, Andrew. Alderwoman Tyus.
Okay, I'm sorry. You say you work for whom?
HNTB Corporation, located at 211 North Broadway.
And so you have a contract with,
The city of St. Louis? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are currently working at Lambert Airport on the inline baggage.
okay, do you have a contract with MoDOT at all also?
Yes, we do.
Okay, and so just my question, why are we doing, can you, in your opinion, because you are not the legislator, why do a sales tax instead of something else that's more appropriate to the roads itself? Or maybe a tobacco tax, why sales tax?
Well, first of all,
Yes, you, Conway.
a sales tax, first of all, the gas tax has not kept up with inflation. The last time it was raised was in 1993. It was not indexed for inflation. Just so that current gas tax of 17 cents, state gas tax, is currently only worth 8 cents.
And let me just stop there for a minute. So we have one of the lowest gas tax?
That's correct.
Okay.
There's been many years of outreach to citizens of Missouri polling on different funding mechanisms, whether that's tolling, gas tax increase, which the gas tax would have to be increased approximately 14 cents to make up the same revenue as a sales tax, or sales tax. And time and again, the polling has shown that Missourians would rather support a sales tax as opposed to a gas tax.
So you think they went shopping? So my neighbor who's 95 years old and does not drive should be saddled with a sales tax, even though she's not on the road, she's not using it. Now, it's not gonna hurt me either way, okay? But you're telling me that the people I represent who are in their 80s and 90s, because it's the easy, so you're telling me that we're doing this because it's the easiest way to get it passed, not the best way or the most fairest way. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Well, if you want to talk about fair, this tax is estimated to cost a low-income family approximately 6 cents per day. It accepts things like food, housing, utilities, and medicine. A similar increase of the gas tax for somebody driving average mileage would cost a family 33 cents per day, over 5 times as much, and that's according to
But it's
testing.
directly related to your use. See, that's my thing. If I use it, then I'll have to pay, I should have to pay for it. I don't like road taxes. I don't like taxes at all. But if I'm using it, it's much fairer than if I'm the grandma sitting someplace, if I'm 80 and 90 years old, and though you estimate it at 6 cents a day. So I deal with constituents who, and that's not anything to you or I, but they have to make decisions every day about medicine, food, or whatever, mostly because they're seniors, not because they've been poor people who didn't contribute to society. So I tell you, nothing to do with even this resolution, I find sales taxes to be very repressive, and I do believe that the reason they're why people use them is because they're the easiest, not because they're the best, and most certainly not the fairest. And I don't believe they did it on a cost estimate. I believe what you said at first is that, oh, we found this is the easiest to pass along. And at some point, when you look at these sales taxes, and I look at all over, our sales tax is going to start sending people shopping other places, okay? Because they're going to get tired of every time we want to fund something that we do a sales tax. So I know you didn't put this in place or anything like that, but if you are out there pushing this, I want you to know what you're saying is that's all right for my 95-year-old neighbor to have to pay that. Sharon Tyus, that's all right, I can afford it, either way. But I don't think it's fair that you ask seniors to support something that they don't even use. And I do agree with the sponsor about urban sprawl. It's too bad we didn't understand that years and years ago.
Alderwoman,
Yeah.
we're asking questions.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just-
I would just like to offer one
Well,
last
no,
thing.
why-
Oh, well, hold on.
Hold on, okay.
I'm the chairman here.
Okay, then. Well,
Well,
let me put it in a question, because I can.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's get the
Let
question
me get the
asked.
question. I'll do
We
the
have a
question.
lot
If you
of
want me to be
speak-
the lawyer, I'll just ask it in a question form. It'll be the
Thank
same
you.
thing. Okay? So, are you concerned about urban sprawl? Because I can ask everything I want to say in a question.
Well, as I stated, I'm not concerned about urban sprawl, according to this amendment, since 70% of the funds coming to the St. Louis region are spent inside of I-270 loop. So to me, that would be our central area of population and also economic development. So regarding this amendment, I would say no.
Okay, and you say you're a former Southampton resident?
That's correct.
And where do you live now?
Webster Groves.
And I understand why you're not concerned about urban sprawl. Thank you very much.
I live in Webster Groves because we moved.
Thank you very much. That was, no, if I don't get to make comments, neither do you. Thank you.
Question.
Okay, Andrew, one more question.
Have you looked into a gas tax? Let me form it, because it has a question, but a gas tax affects the price of groceries and everything when it goes to the store because it's a raise. Anytime gas goes up or gas taxes go up, have you looked into what the effect of this versus higher grocery prices, which could come out to more?
Right, you know, say what you want about the gas tax, that cost is going to be passed into all of our goods that we receive, whether it's groceries or whether, you know, you're receiving something for your business, they're going to roll it into the cost of your delivery or a fuel surcharge on your transportation. I don't have that data, but what I can tell you is that what they've estimated, according to Senate testimony, that it would cost a family is 33 cents per day for a gas tax increase of 14 cents.
Thank you. One more question.
So I'm just curious, my colleague from the First Ward had a lot of questions that I think were very valid. So this was passed in this past General Assembly session, and during that same time there was income tax cuts as well. I'm just curious, is your business going to benefit from those income tax cuts that directly benefit businesses in the state of Missouri?
I can't speak to that. We're headquartered in Kansas City, and I can't speak to what that's going to impact us. But related to the Amendment 7, I don't see how those two things can be tied together.
Well, because at the same time that the General Assembly is passing income tax cuts that generate revenue for the state that go into general revenue funds that can be used for the purposes of funding MoDOT and repairs and maintenance to highways, they're then going around and turning around and asking low and middle income and working class families to fund this. And, you know, that's a huge issue for me, you know, personally as a moral issue.
Alderman.
Yeah, that's an issue. That's why I'm asking the question.
So what I can say to you is that, you know, MoDOT's funding is based on the gas tax and license revenue. They don't receive money from the general revenue, or at least a large portion from general revenue. So
They could.
well, that would be up to the legislators, that every year they would have to set aside a portion of the general revenue budget for MoDOT. When you have contractors out there working on projects, the consistency of the funding mechanism is just not there for the state to support a transportation system when you're dealing on a year-by-year basis on how much funding will be available.
And does your firm do work outside of the state of Missouri?
Yeah, we're a nationwide firm.
So I'm curious, you know, are you aware of the miles per capita in the state of Missouri versus our neighboring states, Kansas, Iowa, Nebraska.
Right? So you're talking about
Nowhere.
how many miles we have?
Miles
per-
of highway per capita, state highways per capita.
I can't speak to per capita, but I know we have a large transportation system, which, MoDOT can't do anything about that. There's routes coming through the city of St. Louis, like Chippewa and Manchester, that are operated by
MoDOT
MoDOT.
has every opportunity to do something about that.
What
They're the ones that-
opportunity?
They're
Would
the
the
ones
city-
that are out there campaigning right
Alderman,
now.
Would the
we
city
are-
like to take
excuse
over
me
the
for a
ownership
second,
of
Andrew.
those
Andrew,
routes?
Andrew, Alderman, we only ask questions. If we want a commentary, we'll do that at the end here.
Okay.
That was a long one question.
I didn't realize that I was limited to just one question.
You can have as many questions as you want, as long as they're questions. Anything else?
Want me to tell you how to ask it as a question?
I don't need to be told how to ask a question. Thank you, though.
Okay.
Thank you for all of your time.
Thank you. Mr. Randy Vines. When'd your dad come home, Randy?
Hi, everyone. I'm Randy Vines. I live at 6115 Washington Boulevard in Skinkert of Oliver, 28th Ward. I'm a business owner in Alderman Ortman's ward on Cherokee Street. And my interest in this issue has been, largely outlined by Alderman Ogilvie. And I did want to clarify one thing. The gentleman who spoke before me actually misreferenced what Alderman Ogilvie said. He did not say that most of the money is being spent outside of the 270 loop in the St. Louis area. He said the most expensive projects were being invested in outside of the 270 loop, and that actually is an empirical fact, according to the bill. My interest in this as a small business owner is the fact that this will be the largest tax increase in the history of Missouri. And it is going to largely bankroll continued, mindless, endless sprawl at the expense of the city of St. Louis. We can deduce numbers saying, oh, we're investing this amount and this amount, millions in here, millions in alternate modes here. Let's look around, because what has happened to the city of St. Louis over the last 60 years is nothing short of embarrassing, tragic, catastrophic, and it all could have been prevented or at least mitigated. But we have, as a region, have been sinking endless investment over the years in continued highway construction. What little allocation this amendment puts toward transit and alternate modes of transportation in the city of St. Louis is not only negated, but completely undermined by the counterintuitive hundreds of millions of dollars in new roads and new lanes on interstate highways throughout the suburbs, the exurbs, and rural areas of Missouri. As a business owner on Cherokee Street, which is a neighborhood quickly revitalizing now and trying to form a SID, which is another layer of tax burden for my customers, but one that we are all willing to get behind because it's a direct benefit to the neighborhood and the vitality of our district. This is just going to add another burden on top of that. And my customers and I, as a result, am paying for massive investment in exurban highway development that really not only doesn't help the city of St. Louis, but actively hurts it. And I think if you look at the list of people and organizations who are against this amendment, the Sierra Club, League of Women Voters, a lot of former members of Citizens for Modern Transit, these are people who are educated on the issues, care very, very deeply about the city of St. Louis, public transit, bike and pedestrian friendliness. We visit other cities and know what works in other cities. The gentleman before who spoke indicated that the state of Missouri hasn't raised its gas tax since 1993. What more do we need? Why should we be at the very bottom of the list of gas tax and the very top of the list for sales tax? My customers at my business are going to be, if this passes, which God forbid, if this passes, my customers will be paying about 11% in sales tax. And if we really care about the city of St. Louis and its viability over the course of the next several decades, then we need to look at what's revitalizing the city right now in the here and now. And that is independent small businesses like mine, helping to revitalize once neglected neighborhoods, people taking a chance and a risk. And we can't afford that burden in return for more sprawl and highway construction. If this was going to be like the Metrolink tax, the sales tax to benefit Metrolink reinstatement of lines, that would be one thing. It would be worth it. I would get behind it. But this bill is really, the lion's share of this amendment is going straight out to rural and outstate Missouri and in direct affront to the city of St. Louis. And I don't think that's a wise investment. I think it is completely counterintuitive. And there is no real measure, there's no way to really calculate how much tax revenue has been lost over the years by people sprawling out to the suburbs from the city of St. Louis. If we were a centralized city again, and the trend nationwide now is people are rediscovering cities, they're embracing cities, and urban policy and transportation policy is taking heed. They're recognizing these trends, and they're investing their much coveted tax dollars in areas and projects that support a vibrant, dense, concentrated urban center, because that really is where the money is. But as long as St. Louis continues to be a laggard and more reactive than proactive, we're going to see us pass by. Look at the Sun Belt, even Atlanta, which is a sprawl capital of the United States. They're starting to get it. They're investing more in central city projects. This bill, this amendment includes some provisions for public transit and alternate modes. It does. I'm not denying that. But compared to what is being spent on highways and roads, it is a tiny pittance, and it is actually insulting as a business owner. And I resent it. I resent that my tax dollars and my customers' tax dollars, who undeniably support the city of St. Louis and have the city's best interests in our core, in the core of what we do. It's the creed that we operate on. I resent that I'm going to be basically financing reasons to leave the city. And I just hope that you all support this very logical, very urban-minded resolution introduced by Alderman Ogilvie. We are the demographics that need to be investing in the city. We are the ones who want to be in the city. Please hear our voices. Thank you.
Hold on.
Sorry.
Thank you, Randy. Any questions? Alderman Ortman, so your constituents, so be nice.
Your sales tax would be 11%. That's not including, the details eventually when the SID gets worked out, what it could be. Right. So it could actually, and the SID would be a direct benefit to the district. And right now, you're not even in the taxing district. They're I call them the kids on Cherokee, are actually trying to, expand the district, for the benefit of more of Cherokee and not just where it is. But so you could be 12, maybe 13%, at the end of that if this would pass and if the SID would.
Potentially, yes. And what I find really unsettling about that is that all these revenues are going into a pool that is dedicated to certain projects that are none of which are guaranteed. They depend upon matching funds.
Compton?
Right, Cherokee and Compton, yeah, right. They're not going to Cherokee and Compton, but there's no guarantee that any of these projects outlined for the city will get done. They depend on so many outside variables, none of which are a lock-in. And I don't know how many more years and decades we're going to waste on or spend on studies or awaiting studies. We just look. I just got back from Chattanooga, Tennessee, a tiny city.
Randy.
And they have a bike sharing
I think the question was
program.
about your rate.
Yeah, I know. Okay. I just was making an extra point.
That I'm done.
All right, we ask questions, we answer questions. It's
Okay.
very simple. Thank you so much.
No, excuse me.
All right.
Thank you.
Alderwoman.
You made a point about that we were the lowest for the gas tax and the highest in the sales tax. And can you tell me why do you think that is?
Well, I'll just clarify. We're in the lowest tier. We're in the lowest
Right.
percent of gas tax, and we will eventually, if this happens, will be catapulted into the upper tier of sales tax. I just think the Missouri represents a state with misguided priorities.
And, okay, that's it right there. That's it. Okay, so you've been active about public transportation, person's been active. So are you familiar with the Missouri Department of Transportation Commission?
Yeah,
At all?
vaguely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long you've been active, but the first time I ever got elected was in '91. So I guess it's been 23 years since I first got elected.
That was the year of my bar mitzvah.
Now, in all of that time, and maybe you can tell me this, the commission members who make decisions about money and how it's going to be spent and everything, have you ever known anybody from even the St. Louis City area, or are you familiar with that, to have been on the commission? Because in my 23 years, the nearest we've got is the county. Do you have any information about that at all?
I have to plead ignorance. I really don't know.
Okay. All right then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Jeff Abusi.
Thank you, members of the committee. I represent the St. Louis Building and Construction Trade Council here in Greater St. Louis region. I was a former resident of the city, now live in St. Louis County. I am here to oppose this resolution. Our council is full support of Amendment 7. And while we've heard many comments that are indeed true about people leaving and devaluation of property, I totally understand that. But I just ask you to consider that if we continue to neglect our roads and bridges, how much further would those properties devalue? And right now, as people talk about MoDOT and keeping up with what needs to be done on an annual basis of resurfacing roads, fixing potholes, repairing our crumbling bridges throughout the state, I do think this is a state problem. And this right now, as this was passed in the legislature, and after the polling data has come out as to what they deem the best way to do it, this is what we have to deal with right now. And I feel the pain of the 95-year-old lady in your ward, Alderwoman, who she is going to suffer when she has to pay extra sales tax. But we did mention the exemptions that would affect that person with the exemptions of food, medicine, et cetera. But I can just tell you that if, in looking back and seeing what we have failed to do for years, and if we continue to look forward and do nothing about this problem, the price of poker is going to get extremely high, and maybe to the point where we won't be able to play and fix and catch up. So is this the fix-all? No, I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done. I think other funding mechanisms need to be done in addition to this amendment that is on the ballot in August. But I think this is a step, and I think we have to look at this thing as it really is. It gives us a way to try to maintain our roads and our bridges. I know that people that support public transportation want more, and I agree. There needs to be a funding mechanism for that too. But I believe this is a start, and with that, I support this. I definitely believe that when they talk about the jobs that are created, this is going to exceed hundreds of thousands of jobs over the life of this sales tax. So with that, I ask you to support this resolution, support the amendment, and not support the resolution. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Alderman Cone.
I want to thank you for coming down today, along with everyone who's here. And I guess I don't see anyone from MoDOT here, so I don't know if we'll actually have an opportunity to ask more specific questions as it relates to their policies and whatnot. But I do know that you spend a great deal of time down in Jefferson City working with our state assembly, and I would imagine folks.
Unfortunately.
So I'm curious if you're aware in your experience working with folks at MoDOT and the Highway Commission, et cetera, do they have policies in place that determine how roads are paved? Is there a certain threshold in terms of ridership on roads that, because here we have the largest highway infrastructure, frankly, in the country that I'm aware of. MoDOT proudly proclaims more state highways than Iowa, Nebraska, and Kansas combined. Those states geographically have 4 or 5 times the amount of land that we do as a state, and then they have twice the I think 1.5 million more people than we do as a state. So I'm curious because we're constantly paving what used to be dirt roads that are state highways and state routes to make them safer. But is there a threshold there in terms of the policy, in terms of, businesses or, ridership along those routes? Or are we just paving old dirt roads that have, connecting one farm to another farm, or, one city of 5,000 to another city of 5,000, that doesn't necessarily justify, tens of millions of dollars in infrastructure?
Well, let me just, I don't know exactly what their formula is or their mechanism for determining, but I can tell you that when you see people overlaying asphalt on highways, that's because the wearing surface is getting thinner and thinner. It's no different than any other road project. When do they determine to do that? I'm not particularly sure, but I would imagine when it starts to get down close to the base pavement. And what happens when it gets down to the base pavement? Roads and bridges decay quicker. So right now, we've seen a delay in doing resurfacing on a lot of state roads and highways due to the lack of funds. That has to be done, and that's just maintenance. Those are the Band-Aids that we do to keep our roads functioning to transport goods and services and people throughout the state. So when you neglect that, and you don't do that as frequent, and it's all based upon the wear and tear. It's just like your automobile. You do preventative maintenance. That asphalt overlay, that concrete repair is preventative maintenance from things getting worse. And right now, we're in a terrible state right now of patching the things that need to be done. We're not talking about building new interstates, or at least I haven't heard of it. But, there is, I believe, money appropriated to do the rebuild of I-70. But these are Band-Aid fixes that need to be done year in, year out, based upon traffic counts, et cetera.
So, and I apologize that you're going to get these questions from me only because I don't have anyone from MoDOT here, and
That's okay. I know you, Alderman, and
I value your
welcome
knowledge
those.
on this. So, in terms of, excuse me, the budget here. I mean, we're talking about, an amendment that's, supposedly going to generate, I've heard estimates of 6.5 billion. I've heard estimates of, 4.8 billion. I'm kind of inclined to go on the larger side of that and, say that this is, 6.4 or 6.5 billion dollars. When you look at MoDOT's budget, it's about $2 billion every year right now. What is that money being spent on? Because this is just 3 years worth of their budget. So, where is that $2 billion going? Is it going towards maintenance? Is it going towards, increasing our infrastructure? I mean, it's hard for me to grasp why we want to, raise a sales tax for, as long as we are, to, bond out these issues and, cover the costs when it's only 3 years worth of their total budget.
Well, Alderman, let me just say this. I mean, that budget that MoDOT has, they have crews that do maintenance work. So not everything that's done do the building trades take care of as far as resurfacing and paving. They have maintenance crews themselves that help fix our potholes and repair bridges and fix broken slabs of concrete on our interstate. So I'm sure that a great part of their budget is used for maintenance within their own crews.
Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions that I have.
Was your testimony was because I think I heard you say because they had done the polling, and so the polling said that sales tax was the best way the easiest way, not the best, that they could.
I didn't say it was the easiest, but
it was. What was your testimony? Then tell me again.
I said that due to the polling, that through their polling, they determined that this was a mechanism that would be used to come to the ballot and to try to pass a funding mechanism to fix MoDOT.
So if they did polling, because you're labor, and they decided that the mechanism that could also raise money was to decrease the wages of labor, would you be coming here telling me that that's a good idea?
I'm telling you, that's a disastrous idea.
Exactly, because I'm labor too. My family's labor.
I know that.
So what I'm telling you is, so what my point would be then is, just because they have a mechanism that gets passed, we keep doing the same thing, we're just going to blow ourselves up. At some point, don't you believe we have to really address the issue and look at the gasoline taxes? Is labor opposed to the gasoline tax, I guess would be my question.
Alderwoman, I'm in favor of a conglomerate of things to help fund our including gas tax, tolling, sales tax, TDD districts. I'm for all of those things because I think if we're going to bring businesses to Missouri and to the St. Louis region, we need to have an infrastructure that's up to par. So I think this is one of possibly many things that we should be doing. Unfortunately, our legislator chose to use this mechanism, which we support. Now, if I have any way to influence them in the future, I would expand various mechanisms, including gas tax, even though we know that the gas tax revenue is going the opposite direction.
I understand that, but we're not going to have one tax fix all. And what I am saying to you or asking you is, don't you believe at some point that we have to stop doing these sales tax? The first time when I got here in 91, we passed the sales tax in 93, and we haven't looked back. Once we got that going, that's all we have done, sales tax, sales tax, sales tax. At what point do you believe that that just doesn't work anymore? I mean, sometimes now I go out to where you live to go shopping when I used to would do it in the city because I can get a cheaper sales tax, okay? So how is that helping St. Louis if myself and other people start to shop and look around and go someplace else because our sales tax has gotten so high? And if you're living out someplace else and you're shopping, you're not dealing with the sales tax that I am.
Well, unfortunately, going into Chesterfield Valley, that sales tax is relatively high and probably exceeds the city, so I feel your pain.
Well, but Chesterfield also has a much more affluent community, okay? So, like I said, whatever happens here, I'm gonna pay the tax. But I don't understand why. I understand why labor is behind it, because you just want to build and you want your people to be employed. But I don't understand why we don't have a bigger global picture of things, because when we just do it the easiest way to get past, that sometimes can be disastrous. As you have already said, if they felt like the easiest was to lower the wages, you would not be standing here saying that's a good thing. So I'm just asking labor to think about this holistically, in that then it's also not a good thing for a 95-year-old woman to be paying a tax that she doesn't even use. And it is much fair if I'm driving the roads for me to be paying a higher tax, even if it's a much higher tax than I would like. That's the only thing I'm saying.
Point taken.
Okay.
Thank you.
No other questions? Okay. Then, thank you. Les Sternman? Les, if you can tell us who you are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, my name is Les Sturman. I'm a resident of the city of St. Louis, 1121 Locust Street, just up the street. I am currently retired. Not just currently retired, I am retired, hopefully forever. Many of you perhaps know me as the former executive director of the East-West Gateway Council of Governments. I was director for 25 years, so I have been on the other side of these issues many times, supporting tax increases to pay for transportation, building and planning transportation systems. So this is an unfamiliar position for me, but one that I feel pretty strongly about. I do oppose Amendment 7, and I would urge you to support this very fine resolution. And let me give you a couple of the reasons why I feel this way. Again, this will be the first time in my life that I vote against a tax. And I think I have to have pretty strong reasons for doing that. This tax clearly is excessive. It's the largest tax increase in the history of the state of Missouri. And it's being done at a time, as Alderman Cohn pointed out, that the General Assembly is reducing taxes for high earners, primarily on the theory that reducing taxes leads to job growth. And so here we're saying, on the one hand, increasing taxes will lead to job growth, and on the other hand, that reducing them will. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, clearly it's the height of hypocrisy, in my opinion. MoDOT over the last 10 years has had the largest construction program in the history of the state of Missouri. We have built although it's no coincidence you've seen all these orange barrels for the last 10 years or so. We've had a huge construction program. And now we're acting like that should be the new normal, that while everybody else, and you more than anybody in caring for the city of St. Louis, know what it's like to have to tighten your belt, to reduce expenditures, to reduce services for all your citizens that need them so badly. The same thing is happening across the state with state agencies. Yet this one agency is entitled now to the largest tax increase in the history of the state. It really doesn't make a lot of sense at this point. I want to touch on a couple of points that have been mentioned earlier. Clearly, the tax is unfair. I mean, it's been mentioned, of course, that this is a tax where users are not being asked to pay, unlike just about every other state in the union. We have one of the lowest gas tax in the country. This tax, because it is a sales tax, and keep in mind that trucks and trailers and truck parts are exempt from paying sales tax, so the trucking industry will pay nothing out of this, nothing. The point is made that, and frankly, it's a pretty weak one, that if trucks have to pay gas tax, they're only going to pass that on to their customers. Well, the fact is that the majority of trucks pass through this state. They're not servicing customers here in the state. They're not. They have no origins or destinations in the state. In fact, if they do pass it on to their customers, it'll be nationwide. So, you know, let that burden be spread nationwide as opposed to limited only to the citizens of the state of Missouri. This tax will have a fairly dramatic effect on the well-being of the city. The city has only so much fiscal capacity. You know, we all pay taxes here to support services, and that's a struggle. You know, the budgets that you pass every year. By absorbing this fiscal, various numbers have been mentioned. There'll be the sales tax will go up as high as 11.429% in the city of St. Louis. Average sales tax will be about 9.5%, higher than most major cities in the country, including New York and Los Angeles and Chicago. We only have so much capacity to pay for the services that really matter to us. Again, as Alderman Ogilvie mentioned, if you ask the average citizen of St. Louis what's most important to them, right now they're going to tell you public education and public safety. They're not going to tell you we need a streetcar. We need I-270 to be rebuilt at a cost of $500 million. I mean, the fact is that it's your responsibility, it's all of our responsibility to care for the citizens of this city, and that's what's needed. There's been some discussion of polling. I mean, frankly, this is a poll-driven proposal. The funding source is driven by polls. The mantra of jobs and safety, that all comes from polls. That's what people, that they're telling the proponents of this, what people want to hear. Well, the fact is that as I mentioned, we've had the largest highway construction program in the history of the state. We have one of the largest highway systems in the country. St. Louis and Kansas City have more pavement, freeway pavement per capita than any two metropolitan areas in the country. And what's that gotten us? The state of Missouri over the last 8 years is 39th in job growth. The St. Louis metropolitan area is 90th out of the 100 largest metropolitan areas in job growth. So the fact is, if transportation indeed means jobs, that equation is not working here. So doing more of the same is hardly a recipe for success. Safety. The fact is that the transportation system becomes safer. And all of that is obvious from the statistics that have been quoted here. The main reasons it becomes safer, things like seatbelt use, more enforcement of drunk driving laws. All of those things are far more important than some of the things that are being done here. And the fact is, if we want to put guardrails and wider shoulders and rumble strips on our roads, we could do that for a tiny fraction of what this proposal is costing. Let me stop there and take some questions.
Does anyone have questions? Alderman Ortman.
You said this is the first tax that you're not going to support?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you possibly think that also in this resolution, you know, that we should kick it back to the state legislators suggesting, you know, that a gas or diesel tax would be more appropriate, and then the people that use it would actually, you know, spend for it? Because you also said that the truck drivers, you know, they do the most damage to the roads, and they're not paying a cent, not unless they stop and buy a sandwich.
No, I think that's absolutely appropriate. In fact, this amendment, if it's approved, will prohibit us from raising the gas taxes or imposing a toll over the next 10 years. So Mr. Abusi's suggestion, which is a good one, that we consider other sources in the future, I mean, that's off the table if this passes.
I have to think about how to put everything in a question, but Conway's not here right now. So, anyway, I'm going to make a statement because Steve isn't here. But I don't think, I haven't had one person say that they're going to support this. Okay, and I'm in the bar business. I talk to a lot of people. I'm out there all the time. I haven't had any, besides the unions, supporting this at all. So I think no matter what we do here, after Election Day in August, it's going to get shot down, and it'll be back in our state legislators' hands again. And I hope they wise up a little bit and try to do the right thing and make it, fair for everybody. And I think we'd all be on the same page as far as supporting it and trying to get it passed, just so we have, that maintenance money or the money to add a shoulder or whatever, MoDOT has to do.
We're gonna do comments at the end, and I hate to go against the
Still not cutting the
chair.
grass down by the 9th Ward along 55 anyway, so I don't know where that maintenance is, so anyway, I'm done.
Thank you. Any other questions? There has to be questions. I'm not gonna do statements. That's why
I
I
don't
stopped.
care. I know how to make my statements into questions. I'm used to this with the court
Because
judges,
we're-
much tougher than you.
Just because we're getting redundant, and we can go forever.
Okay. You made it, I want to make sure I quote you right. So you said this is the first time you've ever posted, and I do know you from East West Gateway. And so you don't think that this is the way to fund highways, right? Is that your?
That's correct.
Okay, but are you familiar with, I had a Kansas City legislator try to talk to me about why this was a good idea. And so is there something in this that I'm missing about that they're trying to also help Kansas City get MetroLink up with part of this funds? Do you know anything about this?
I know a little bit about it, and perhaps others here will know more, but yes, Kansas City is trying to build their equivalent of MetroLink.
Right.
And after a lot of discussion, they got the promise in this amendment of a lot of money, a couple of $100 million going towards that project, contingent on their ability to raise still more money, much like us. But they got a much larger percentage paid for, but they don't have any rail transit system right now.
And in your opinion, since you deal with them for such, you've dealt with, I guess, MoDOT for a long time. In your opinion, if this doesn't get passed, will they come back and try to do it a different way? Or will we just be lost and not have new highway safety and all the things that they say we're going to lose if we don't pass this? Do you think that?
I hope they do. I mean, I think there's a more fair and rational way to do this. I don't think they need as much money as they're claiming, and we're trying to maintain a construction program at the level we've had it for the last 10 years, and in this economic environment, we can't do that, so we've got to be a little smarter about how we do things, and a little bit more modest. Their executive director was quoted as saying they need about $160 million more than they have simply to maintain the system in the condition that it is now. I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation for the future. That's what all of us are doing in government right now, is trying to maintain what we've got. So I don't know why they deserve special treatment.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Clinton McBride.
I am Clinton McBride. I live at 4737 Hummel in the 7th Ward. I am here representing the Laborers Union of Eastern Missouri, and I would like to voice our opposition for the resolution and our support of Amendment 7. This has the potential to create hundreds of thousands of not only jobs, but very good paying jobs across the state, and that is something that the people of Missouri are severely needing. One thing I would like to remind this body of is the fact that here in Missouri we have Hancock Amendment. So in order to fix our roads and bridges and provide those fundings, our legislature can't do that unicamerally. That has to be put before the vote of the people. And in order to do that, you've got to come up with a proposal that can be passed. And everything indicates that this isn't just one way to do it, but that the sales tax is the only way that this is going to get done. And we hear a lot of other proposals out there, but the feasibility of those is just not there. There's no way that those are going to pass. So we've got a problem that's going to continue to fester if we don't do something about it. And our legislature, we've been working for almost 4 years now trying to get something done. And this is what we came up with. We feel like this is a very good proposal, and we would like to ask for your opposition. We would like to ask you to vote against the resolution and to support Amendment 7. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Yes, ma'am.
Did you talk to any people, all these people out here that are opposed to it? So when you went to your legislature, you said, okay, you did that polling, and you promised the people in Kansas City, this is what we'll give you over here, and labor, you'll have jobs, and labor's never going to oppose jobs, I understand that. But did you actually take into consideration the people that is going to affect that, is how unfair it is? And so I guess what I'm asking you is, in your opinion, no matter how unfair this tax, we're going to get it done over the backs of 95-year-old people.
That's not what I'm saying, actually. I think that we hear a lot of people saying, well, these 95-year-old people aren't using our roads, and directly that may be the case, but indirectly that's not the case. Those 95-year-old people, they still eat food. Those 95-year-old people still take clothing. Those 95-year-old people still need medication, prescriptions. So indirectly, they do use our roads.
So then why do you think that but directly, we know the gasoline tax, why is it that you can't get a gasoline tax passed?
There's not support for it.
Why is that, do you think?
I can't speak to why people don't support that.
Okay, could it be that because when you put sales tax, that puts the burden on all the people who don't use it, but a gasoline tax actually puts the burdens on the people that use it? Could that be part of the reason?
The gasoline tax actually puts the burden on everyone because those products are shipped and they require fuel to get there. And if, this beef is coming from wherever and it's got to get shipped to me, well, under the sales tax, those things aren't going to be taxed, right? The tax will not apply to that. But under the gasoline tax, our prices on everything are going to go up, and it's going to even more disproportionately affect those poor people that you're purporting to help.
I totally disagree. But if it affects everyone, then why won't they pass it? What difference does it make which tax we use if it affects everyone?
Because we're looking for something that can feasibly get passed, and this is our only opportunity.
Again, it comes back to why can't it feasibly be passed? If what you're saying is true, you're saying to me the gasoline tax affects everyone. So then why wouldn't the legislature?
I don't think there's one single answer for that. I think there's a lot of various different answers, and everybody has their own reason.
Why is it? I didn't know. The previous person said something I didn't know, that the truck drivers don't pay taxes on, and why is that?
I'm not a truck driver. I don't know the answer to that.
You don't know at all? Did you know that at all?
I'm not even saying that that's true. I'm saying I don't have that information in front of me. I can get it to you within 48 hours if you would like. But I don't have that information in front of me.
Because my ward is going to vote it down. I know that already. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Tom Shrout.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Tom Shrout. I live at 5056 Westminster Place in the 28th Ward. I'm going to try not to be repetitious this morning. I'm retired. For 22 years, I was the Executive Director of Citizens for Modern Transit. And as Mr. Sturman said, I've worked very, very hard over that period of time to raise taxes for Metrolink. And we did that twice successfully in the city of St. Louis and twice successfully in St. Louis County. Not to be repetitious, I would point out that the city of St. Louis has the authority to go up to a 1-cent sales tax to support Metrolink and the bus system. You're currently at a 1/2 cent. St. Louis County has the same authority and currently is at 3/4 cent. Should the city and the county again decide that public transit and expanding the north side, south side Metrolink was a priority, that would raise, and double check my figures because I'm a little rusty, I've been gone at this for 4 years, I think it would be around $60 million a year that could go towards that expansion. 1/2 cent would be about 16 in the city. 1/4 cent in the county would be around 40, I think. So there's capacity. Should Amendment 7 pass, that competes with this local capacity to do something that I think is very, very important. Just a personal story. After my wife and I walked to Metrolink. It's about a 15-minute walk. We took Metrolink down here. We're going to go back. On the way back, we're going to stop at Starbucks at Maryland and Euclid. I used to not ask for the receipt. I got the receipt the other day because I was curious. 11.2% for a cup of coffee in sales tax. I'm the pro-tax guy. That's kind of stretching it a little bit, you know, guys. And also, not to be repetitious, the other day we had a meeting in Kansas City on this issue. We got on, took Metrolink to the Amtrak station, took Amtrak over to Kansas City. There's nothing in this for Amtrak. You know, if people were concerned about safety, what we ought to be doing is getting people on the safer modes of transportation. That's the bus, that's Metrolink, that's the train. That's much safer than driving. And if we had a really robust systems of buses and trains and walking and bike and ped, that would do more to improve safety than resurfacing some roads around the state of Missouri. I would, slightly off topic, but people have brought up BRT. I would urge this committee to vet the BRT projects that Metro is proposing. I don't feel that those have been fully vetted. The first question you might ask Metro is, they've attempted fast buses in the 40 corridor in the past. Tell me how that worked out. If it worked out, it would still be there, right? So with that, I'd be happy to take some questions.
You know, the sales tax rate's higher in the 28th Ward for all of you residents there. Thank you.
But we have a CID, and it's been really helpful.
All right. Nancy Cross.
Hi, my name is Nancy Cross. I live on Buckingham Court in the city, and I've been in Missouri for about 11 years, and I've lived in the Central West End all that time. I represent the Service Employees International Union. Our membership are mostly low-wage workers. Half of them live in the, they live across the state, but almost 2,000 of them live in St. Louis City, and a little more over 3 live in St. Louis County for this side of the state. And I came to talk today against Resolution 99, which probably seems a little surprising because usually SEIU would be one of the first ones out saying no sales tax, it's regressive, and this is bad for our members. But we had discussions with our members directly and also within our state council to talk about this, because for our members, one of the best ways that they get to work is through public transportation. And for the last 7 years, we've been going to the state legislature trying to get either a transit tax district, straight money for public transit, specifically Metro in the St. Louis County and St. Louis City area, or some just funding for public transportation to make it better. We worked on Prop A in the county to get that sales tax passed, and it helped our members because it didn't stop operations, it kept funding operations, and a sum of money was set aside for future growth. We've been advocating for this for a long time now, and unfortunately, we've been unable to get the state legislature to move off of their position that they're not going to fund public transportation. In a couple times, we had a couple legislators finally get to the point that they understood why this was necessary for statewide, and because of term limits, then they're out of office, and you're retraining people all over again and educating as to why we should do this. It was very difficult within our organization to come to the realization that we would be for the tax, but we've come to this point because it doesn't affect some of the goods that they would most traditionally be taxed and pay for, which is groceries, rent, medicines, and things of that nature. And we really want to see public transportation developed in this region so that our people aren't taking buses or bus combination with a Metrolink and taking an hour and a half, 2 hours to get to work or each way. We're trying to create a better area, working conditions for our people, and one of them is not having them spend half of their time getting to and from work. So overall, we're in favor of Amendment 7, and we'd ask that you support Amendment 7 and vote down Resolution 99. And if you can't, we'd like you to stay open on the issue, because we think this is the only time that this is going to be able to see this kind of money go into transportation money for our members going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't know if anyone has any questions. Okay.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
Yep.
Mr. Gino Bernardez. Morning.
Good morning. My name is Gino Bernardez. I work for Horner and Schifrin, located here in the city. We've been in business since 1933, all of those 81 years here in the city. I'm actually here today to speak on behalf, or deliver excerpts of a message on behalf of Dwayne Siegfried, who is the president of our company. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it here today, but he did write a message to Ms. Heiss, I think yesterday, and I believe to all the other aldermen. So he is a city resident as well. So I will not, in listening to everybody else that has come up here and spoken, I'm not going to repeat a lot of the things that he had here,
right?
So that I can minimize my time here and give everybody else a chance to speak. But here is some of the points that he wanted everybody else to listen to. I urge the Transportation and Commerce Committee not to take an adverse position to Amendment 7. Why does Missouri need additional funding for transportation? MoDOT, and I know some of this has been mentioned, but MoDOT is 7th in state-maintained road miles. That's 34,000 miles. And 6th in the number of bridges, 10,400 bridges, within the 50 states, but only 40th in funding per mile of road. As everybody knows, in the last few years, MoDOT has done a lot of cost cutting. They have laid off 1,200 people, closed about 130 facilities, and have sold off or gotten rid of 740 pieces of equipment since 2011, saving $512 million by 2015. They are doing all they can to reduce cost. On top of that, they're doing it with revenue that is 40th in funding per mile of road, which means they are more efficient than 39 of the 50 states. He goes on to say, the transportation system is a critical component to attract new businesses to the area. Without it, we will lose existing employers and have a harder time attracting new business to come to the area. He goes on to say that if this tax is not passed, the state will have to turn to toll roads in order to fund projects. Within 3 years, funding will be so low, there will be insufficient funding for the repair of bridges. I think it's been mentioned before that really a lot of what MoDOT has been doing lately is really maintenance. There's not enough funding to do a lot of new projects. As the system, MoDOT will not leave an unsafe bridge open, so they will be forced to close bridges. As the system deteriorates, bringing it back will be more expensive. And not just bridges, but roadway system as well. That's really the main points that he wanted me to share with you this morning. And I'd like to give everybody else a chance to speak. I know there's a lot of people out here that have other points they want to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Mr. Eddie Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. My name is Eddie Roth. I live at 3644 Flat Avenue in Ward 8. I am Deputy Chief of Staff to Mayor Francis Slay. And I'm here this morning to just confirm for you that Mayor Slay enthusiastically supports Amendment 7. He hopes that the Board of Aldermen will support it as well. And the reason that Mayor Slay supports Amendment 7 is because the projects it will fund will greatly strengthen the city of St. Louis, will connect people to jobs, will improve the quality of life and the vibrancy of life, will attract young people and entrepreneurs, and will make a difference. Will it solve all of our ills? No, but it'll have a real impact. But beyond that, if you look at the cities that have successful transit, urban transit, alternatives to highways, including the cities that Mr. Vines talked about visiting, and that have been successful in winning people's vision and support for alternatives to an automobile-centered kind of transportation system, all of them have the support of financial support and policy support of the state in which they are situated. The Kansas City Star, in endorsing Amendment 7, says that voters, Missouri voters, will have a chance to make history if they vote to approve Amendment 7, and that's true, because for the first time in the history of Missouri, transportation policy and transportation funding will not be limited to highways and bridges, but will embrace fully alternatives to transportation. I know there's been some talk about the extent to which the funding under Amendment 7 would go to urban transportation. I can tell you that one of the features of Amendment 7, one of the things that makes it acceptable to the mayor and his endorsement, is the idea that the decisions of how to spend the money almost entirely are made on the local level, and that the funding itself stays on the local level. So the sales tax, about 90% of the sales tax revenue that is collected in the city of St. Louis go to St. Louis city projects. The 10% that are for projects outside the city of St. Louis directly benefit the city in that they are going to be used to rehabilitate Interstate 70, which is a vital part of the city of St. Louis's interstate transportation system. Businesses that depend on shipping things and receiving things and connecting people to other commerce centers depend on Interstate 70. 90% go to projects in the city of St. Louis that will be constructed in the city of St. Louis. You know, we do live in the state of Missouri, and the other parts of the state of Missouri have determined that they would like to spend their money on highways because that's how they get along. And that's how they get around. The decision to spend money on highways outside of the city of St. Louis is not a decision that MoDOT made. If you read Amendment 7, the only prescription as to how the money would be spent is for the 10% of the money for Interstate 70. Elsewise, it is decided by the Highway Commission on recommendation of political leaders in each of the districts of the state of Missouri, as organized by the Highway Department. MoDOT did not shape the priorities and recommendations, but rather the political leaders. And so you have political leaders in St. Charles County, quite naturally, saying that they want their money for highways. The sales tax that they raise in their county, they want for highways. The same in rural parts of the state. The monies that they raise for out of sales tax are for highway improvements in their area. In the city of St. Louis, we want our money to go to urban transportation projects, for street improvements, sidewalk improvements, accessibility improvements, a significant investment in creating the streetcar, paying our fair share of bus rapid transit, both to North County and west, to speed the time that people spend commuting to jobs. For as long as we have had highways, the city of St. Louis has been advocating for a seat at the table and a slice of the pie and substantial funding for urban transportation. We have that chance now. And the question I have for those who oppose it is, how long have advocates for urban transportation been advocating for a state role and state support? And the answer is 20, 30, 40 years. What successes have they had up till now? The answer is none. If amendment fails, how long will it be before we get another chance to sit at the table in transportation? 10 years, 20 years. I think that these are the questions that we have to ask, and if we want a bright future of urban transportation, the opportunity is not in saying no, it's in engaging and in setting example here in the city of St. Louis, taking yes for an answer from our General Assembly, and making things happen right here in the city of St. Louis. Thank you.
And I just had one question. You had made a statement that 90% of the sales tax collected in the city had to be used in the city?
No, well, yes, no,
I just wanted to know what that statement meant. I mean,
of all of the sales tax that is collected in the city, in the state of Missouri, 10% comes off the top to support Interstate 70.
Okay.
That's before anything goes anywhere else. A little tiny part, less than 1%, goes for administrative and collection costs. Another 5% goes into a fund for municipalities that allow the municipalities to spend that money as they see fit. There's no lists that have to go before the state. It can be spent on any kind of transportation. There's a comparable fund for county transportation. The city of St. Louis is eligible under both the municipal and the county, and will receive about an estimate of $2.4 million a year for each of the 10 years that this sales tax, this time-limited sales tax is in existence, to use as it sees fit, as local match for bridges, for whatever projects it wants. The remaining 90% is for these projects that everybody has seen a list. And the way that the priorities have been set in each of the districts of the Missouri highway system, Department of Transportation, is by local political leaders, and it was compressed in time because it passed in June, and then the governor immediately announced an August election, so there was not as much time to have the kind of process that would have been ideal. And so basically the Highway Commission and MoDOT said, political leaders, tell us what your priorities are. We announced our priorities after meeting with our partners, GRG, Metro, Aldermen Ogilvie, TrailNet, the highway, MoDOT itself, to understand what its priorities were, and other interested, SLDC, to look at what have we been working on, because we probably have $1 billion in needs or more, and so what are the projects that are furthest along and that could have the biggest impact, and that would also be equitable geographically across the city. Those were some of the considerations. So of the projects that we prioritized, all of them, out of the 90%, are situated in the city of St. Louis. 10%, because it's taken off the top, goes to support Interstate 70.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman, you got to be fast. I looked at you.
Just said all right to him closing.
I looked at you. You were moving slow. Ask
So,
the question.
I feel like I should delay how long it takes me to ask this question if I am moving that slowly, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Mr. Roth.
Yes, sir.
My question to you, I'm kidding. So you just mentioned that the mayor's office worked, and you and I have had much public discussion over this particular issue.
Animated but cordial, I would say.
I agree, and I appreciate that about you. So I would, you just mentioned that the mayor's office, and I've been very public that, I think the mayor's office did put together a very decent list for the city of St. Louis. Some of the projects are, pretty exciting. Some of them are absolutely necessary, and then another part don't really qualify for either of those. So But you did just mention that the list that you put together was equitable across the city. You know, I represent an area in southeast city, and I'm curious, I don't recall seeing any projects on there south of Gravois and really east of Kings Highway.
Well, we have a lot of transportation
a huge
ideas.
part of the city that has about 160,000 people living there.
Well, you know, we put together the list of projects that could get done in 10 years and would have the biggest impact.
Well, it's curious to me and I apologize for interrupting, but, you know, I have, along with a number of my colleagues down here, had conversations with MoDOT in regards to Gravois. Gravois is currently on their list of roads that is slated to be repaved. They're spending, you know, a few $1 million repaving Gravois. You know, a lot of us have concerns in regards to the, you know, accessibility of Gravois, you know, the bus routes that may or may not run along Gravois, interstate or intersection changes that need to be made, particularly, you know, Gravois, Morgan Ford, Delore, and a number of interchanges once you get south of Chippewa. These are all conversations that we've been having for probably about a year and a half with the Board of Public Service and MoDOT. I personally have been in at least 2 of those meetings, if not 3, and there's already money in MoDOT's budget for resurfacing of Gravois from, you know, basically downtown to the city limits. And it just seems really uncomfortable to someone who represents, you know, part of Southeast City and an area of the city that has half the city's population. And we're talking about equitable, you know, distribution of projects, and there are no projects in that area. And there's already a project that's on the line that MoDOT is, you know, contributing towards, but the city hasn't found the, you know, decency to, you know, put money towards that in this allocation, so to speak. And so, you know, I've been pretty open in terms of, you know, how I feel about this, you know, just as a moral compass for me. You know,
Alderman, we're asking questions that I know a million lawyers, and that was the longest question I've ever heard in my life.
So aside, when you talk about equitable distribution of projects, where is the equity in an entire fourth of the city not having any representation on this list?
Well, I would say that your constituents, and I don't mean, I mean, I totally understand the opportunity as well as the need for transportation improvements in your ward and the neighborhoods that surround it. When I talk about equitable distribution, I talk just generally in terms of south, central, north. And I would agree with you that for your particular ward, I can't point to a, other than things that generally benefit the
Any
city.
ward south of Chippewa and east of Kings Highway, about 160,000 people live in that area. Any project, feel free to name one.
South, say it again. What's the area?
South of
I'd have to look.
Chippewa,
I have to look at the list.
South
I
of
haven't.
Chippewa
I haven't
and
committed.
east of Kings Highway.
Yeah,
It's
there,
roughly
yeah,
the
no, there
Bevo
is,
Mill
there is,
neighborhood,
there is an
the
improvement
Dutchtown
of
neighborhood, the
Broad-
Carondelet neighborhood, the
Broadway.
Boulevard Heights neighborhood.
Wait. 2 people cannot talk at the same time.
I'm trying to provide context because I know we
Okay, well,
often
let
think
him
in
answer
terms
the
of neighborhoods
question,
here.
and then you can.
Yeah, there are 3 that, and I'd have to look at the list, and I don't have the list right in front of me, but I can think of 3. There's a complete streets project on Broadway, on South Broadway. There's a complete streets project on Morgan Ford, and there's a complete streets project on South Grand, which I think all are within the geographic area that you described.
That's outside of it, but actually.
Insofar as the people who live in that area are transit dependent, we strengthen the transit system and through BRT as part of this project. There also are citywide monies, about $7 million that would go for sidewalk ADA improvements, and so there'll be opportunity, crosswalk and sidewalk improvements for disability, and so that your ward would benefit from some portion of those insofar as you have that need. It doesn't have everything that we need, but what it does have is an opportunity for us to stake our claim with the state of Missouri And I would just say that the answer no means it'll be another 20 years before we get to the state to the table. And an answer yes means that we can make some pretty great things, as you point out, happen.
I'm going to ask this just because, I represent an area that, is in great transition, and many of the neighborhoods around it are also in transition and, really struggling. I mean, we were really hard hit with the recession, and real estate prices haven't fully recovered, and many of the neighborhoods around my ward and in my ward. So you're talking about, BRT, Grand and Graveway. Why are they not part of that discussion? I mean, the highest ridership of the entire metro system is the Grand bus line, and yet we're not talking about BRT along Grand or even Graveway, which MoDOT's primed to pump a couple million into resurfacing.
If you take a look at the East-West Gateway, Metro's and the East-West Gateway's analysis of the first two BRT lines, you'll see that the two that were chosen were considered to be the two most promising with the highest ridership. And I know that there is high ridership there. I would tell you that in terms of the streetcar, the St. Louis streetcar project, that the alignments, the north-south and east-west alignments have not been finally determined. In fact, part of the $25 million that has been designated for the streetcar is to develop more information as to those final alignments, and I would get in touch if I were you with the downtowns. There are many options for north-south alignments, including in the area that you describe, and the North 14th Street to Florissant Road to Old North St. Louis down to Choteau has been identified as the one that they think most likely would attract federal funding. But the idea of what's going to happen now and before anything is decided is to look at Jefferson, to look actually at Sarah has been identified as a north-south possibility. And now Grand has just gotten the larger buses, and so waiting for that to settle. But there are opportunities in your ward, and you are preaching to the choir in terms of what I think is both a need and a tremendous opportunity, and I'm happy to work with you on the ground.
I'm not talking about just my ward. I'm talking about an entire quarter of the city.
I understand. I meant that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the indulgence.
Is anything coming into the 8th Ward in this? That's okay. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks. Mr. Jeff?
Excuse me?
Oh, I'm sorry. I looked at you first before we got to him. All right, Alderwoman.
Thank you very much. Did I just hear you say that you were talking about Sarah as a possible north-south corridor?
Yes.
Because Sarah kind of dead ends. I'm like listening to that. I had other questions, but I'm thinking like Sarah dead ends right past Forest Parkway over at Manchester.
Brown Clayton Road.
And then it dead ends north. I want to say, it doesn't go, I don't understand how Sarah would even be on the list because it dead ends, God, it doesn't even come that far. Page, a little past Martin Luther King, maybe over to St. Louis Avenue or something like that. And that would be a north-south corridor. Why?
I'm not saying it would be. I'm saying that many are under consideration and that somebody has brought that up even as a possibility. I'm not an expert on which of the alignments make the most sense. I brought that up as a point to say that there is plenty of opportunity for people who have ideas on which one makes the most sense.
Okay. Oh, I know Euclid, so I understand Euclid, Kings Highway, Grand. When you say Sarah, I'm like, wow, that's like saying Maffett Place to me. That's a small area to be I mean, it's not a long line, is what I'm saying. The alderman from the 25th has more information than me. So where could I get this list of potential sites that are going to be developed? Where'd you get that from, and how can I get it from you, Mr. Roth?
Are you talking about the streetcar? I mean, is that what?
I think she's referring to the list that was published out on the city's website.
Oh, it's on the city's website, but it wasn't given to us directly?
I think Mr. Brown from the mayor's office emailed us with a link to the city's website.
Yeah,
Okay,
that was
okay.
the initial list, and
Okay.
that has since been refined. If you go to MoDOT, the list appears, the final list is approved by the State Highway Commission, is on MoDOT, so I'll be happy to send you a link
No,
to
no,
that.
no, I can go on MoDOT if you just tell me where it is.
Right.
Okay, so can you just kind of enlighten me about some more of the projects, not Sarah, okay, some other things that I would like to hear about. What other things are on that list, the final list?
There is $25 million for the streetcars, $16 million for bus rapid transit. There are north, south, and central substantial complete street projects, which is sidewalks, lighting, cycling safety, and in Goodfellow between Natural Bridge and Interstate 70, MLK between Kings Highway and Grand, Natural Bridge between Kings Highway and Grand, North Grand.
What about Natural Bridge between Kings Highway and Grand? Now you have my interest, what about it?
That it would receive, hold on a second, I'll give you the exact.
I tell you what, I'll have a copy. Can I make a copy of that and just
You
give that to
can,
everyone?
you can have this copy.
And I'll have Dave, or I'll have Joe get this.
Okay.
And then we'll come back to you on that list, and we'll give everybody a copy.
All right.
Okay, the next, let me just tell you a concern I have. So I was down here when we decided to let MetroLink become a reality, and I sat on the committee that voted, even though they didn't tell me the truth about a lot of things. So when I hear these things about trolleys and things like that going down Delmar, it makes me furious, and I guess my question becomes, how did we get to the trolleys and things, and we're still not north-south corridor? It's like we are just being ignored in parts of the cities, and you give us just a little bit so we can say, oh, well, that's my ward, I'm getting it. But I'm much more concerned about a north-south MetroLink route than I am about trolleys down Delmar. And it's not that I don't like Delmar or anything, because I actually live close enough that I'm at the Central West End or on the Delmar Loop all the time, because I live less than 5 minutes. But I just think that, can you explain to me what happened to connecting the north and south corridor and trying to get money to do that versus all these little extra things for the central corridor? That we don't have the basic necessities that everybody else has.
Well, I don't agree with a lot of the particulars of how you couch the statement. I will tell you that federal money for light rail is non-existent, and without federal money for light rail to construct new additions, that it simply does not become feasible. And the cost of light rail is some multiple of what the cost of streetcar is, and so there are ways to expand the reach of conventional transit more broadly and in ways that do win federal support that are much less costly than light rail. So we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in just local funding, more than the city would get under this entire thing without a federal match. And so this is a time-limited 10-year sales tax, and there's no feasibility in that 10 years that we can see, especially since there's no federal money for light rail that would make that a possibility.
And so, but then, and I asked this question earlier about Kansas City, then has something promised to them about light rail in their part of the money. So somebody in Kansas City said, well, we're going to get started with this part. And since we made a promise to the people in North and South St. Louis for the connector, then why wouldn't we be trying to use this money for something like that, which many of us may not like, but maybe could see a start of keeping a promise that's been made to us and strung out over years. We are actually spending money to redo stations when we still have not done what we promised that we would do. And I guess the only person here who was here at that time was Conway, but this was a promise made many, many years ago. And so now to keep coming back and telling us, oh, we can't do it, then how can you ask us to keep supporting this, and in one of these days, your grandchildren may get it? Is that what you're telling me?
Well, I don't know. I can't see the future that far in terms of when federal policy will change for light rail. It did change. And so and I was not in city government at the time promises would be made, but I do know that there was federal money for these kind of things then, and there is not now. And so that is a big change. As far as Kansas City goes, you'd have to consult with Kansas City, but I think that that theirs is a streetcar project. I could be wrong about that. And just as we are doing a streetcar project here in the city of St. Louis, and it does appear that the federal government is favoring streetcars opposed to light rail on the basis, I'm not an expert in the federal funding system. Also, I would not agree with your characterization of the support for transit and what the city of St. Louis and especially St. Louis County have done in terms of expanding light rail and other transit opportunities. I would say that St. Louis County has been heroic in its support of a transit system that primarily, but not exclusively, benefits transit-dependent and transit-choice people in the city of St. Louis. 4 years ago, St. Louis County voters
Mr. Roth.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay. You're as bad as my question askers.
Okay, so, okay, and so my question is, so you just said that you think that the Department of Transportation favors trolleys over Metrolink or light rail, right?
My understanding is that there are opportunities for funding for streetcars and that there are not opportunities for funding for light rail from federal sources.
And is that equal with light rail? Because one of the things we talked about Natural Bridge and it being one of the connectors is that we were, instead of being underground, it was going to be above ground system, which I understand to be a lot less expensive than if you got to dig up and put it. So is that because it's less expensive? Do you know what the rationale behind that? Because that doesn't make sense to me. Okay.
I'm not entirely sure, but I do know it is much less expensive to do a street-level streetcar than it is to find the right-of-way and build light rail.
But is it less expensive to build a light rail that's a street level versus putting it underground?
Underground is prohibitively expensive. Very little of our system is underground.
Right. So then, okay, you're not making that decision. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Did we get copies of?
Yes, I'll have those in a minute.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Roth.
Mr. Chairman, I did leave for the committee written statements, one from Mayor Slay, most recently published, also the Sly James statement in support of it, the Citizens Association of Kansas City and the Kansas City Star endorsement, and Citizens for Modern Transit endorsement of Amendment 7. Thank you.
Jeff Hans.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to allow everyone to speak on this, obviously a complicated issue that we have before us. I work for the Carpenters District Council of Greater St. Louis and vicinity, which covers the entire state of Missouri, state of Kansas, and the southern portion of Illinois. I'm also a city resident, Crondolette Park neighborhood of 5901 Leona, have been for 25 years. I come before you to ask you to oppose the resolution and support Amendment 7. There's been a lot said about how the elderly should be unfairly impacted by this particular tax. We as citizens pay taxes on a lot of things that we do or do not use, particularly public school system in the city. The elderly don't utilize that service, and quite frankly, it's not, it's so poor that I, as a father, am sending my school or my son to a public school out in the county, so I'm going to be traveling these very highways that I need the support of in order to safely travel back and forth. So again, as a member of my organization of approximately 24,000 members in the state of Missouri, we're asking you to oppose Resolution 99. And as a resident of Crondolette Park, I also do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Are there any questions? Okay. Vicky Garose or LaRose? LaRose? Okay, I'm sorry. The lighting's bad, or I'm getting older, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, I'm not used to using my cheaters either, so. I'm Vicki LaRose. I am president of Civil Design. I have a small engineering company down in Soulard in Ward 7. I live in St. Charles, but I'm originally from Wisconsin. Didn't know. I would have loved to live in the city, but I married a North County boy, and they don't come to the city, unfortunately. But I'm pushing to get him here, because both my one son goes to SLU. Anyway, I'm against resolution, or 99, and I just wanted to just give you a few facts. The state sales tax for Missouri is the lowest in all of surrounding states. It's only 4.23, and after they add this 0.75 cents to this sales tax, it'll be just a little bit above Oklahoma, which is 4.5. So there's a difference between the city's taxes and the state of Missouri's sales tax. So I just wanted to point that out. And also, I'm a member of Leadership Missouri, which there's 36 of us that go around for 7 months looking at all the issues in the state of Missouri. And last week, we spent the 3 days here in St. Louis talking about transportation. And we spent a fair number of that time out at the airport. And
trying to get through this.
It was it's been very excited to see what Rhonda is doing with the airport, and a lot of her initiatives of building and bringing people to that airport for, she wants to fly pigs out of there and all this kind of stuff. And we won't be able to do that without our transportation system, and because that's what's going to bring businesses into the city of St. Louis, which is going to bring revenue into the city as well. And also, IKEA, I'm sure that's one of the main reasons why they picked where they picked, was because of the transportation system that we have. So we have to keep funding that, and MoDOT is at a crisis. In a couple years, they're not going to have enough to maintain what they have, enough money to maintain what they have. And by then, it's going to be too late, and it's going to cause all of us to have to really give more than this quarter-cent sales tax that we are asking for now. And as a business owner, I am looking at a couple of my employees that their jobs are on the line if this does not pass. So it's meaningful for me, not only as a business owner, but as a resident of Missouri. I am very pro-commerce. Let's go, let's bring the jobs. And if they redo, when they added lane to 70, that is only going to bring more revenues to our state. So, and consequently helping the city. So.
Vicki, I appreciate it. Excuse me for 1 second. It is really hard for me to listen when you both are talking in my ear as this lady is speaking. Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Well, can I just add one thing?
Yes, you can. I apologize for that, so you can say whatever you like. You can ask me a question. I'm open to that.
Well, you know, we were having a discussion in our lunchroom yesterday about the sales tax and everything, and everybody believes in my company it should be a user's tax. We believe that. And we can't use the federal or the gasoline tax as a user tax because it's a degenerative tax. And also, by 2025, they're mandated that all cars should be 40 miles to the gallon, which is going to put us back to where we are right now, only in worse shape because nobody's going to be driving needs as much gas.
Right.
So we talked about Big Brother. We'd have to have something in our car to match how many miles that we would want to go, and nobody really wants that. Nobody really wants to tell the government where we're going. So the sales tax, I feel at this point, until we can figure out as a nation how that's going to work as a user tax, the sales tax is the most fair for everyone because it spreads it across. I mean, I don't want to see if they put it on diesel, it's 90 cents. If to get the same amount of revenue they put on the diesel trucks is 90 cents in the state. That is going to cost eggs, bread, milk to cause that to go up by 90 cents. So that was my only other thing. So.
Thank you. All right. Linda Moan, or you can correct me on my pronunciation, Linda. I can't afford anything that expensive.
Oh, they sell them at Home Depot.
Oh, okay, well then maybe I can afford it.
He's joking. My name is Linda Moen. I'm here on behalf of the Associated General Contractors of St. Louis and also the American Council of Engineering Companies. Between the two organizations, we represent hundreds of engineering companies who work on your transportation system every day. So we've seen it decay, we've seen the condition it's in, we know what the need is. I'm here to ask you not to pass the Resolution 99 and to be in support of Amendment 7, mainly because I think you need to recognize the need. We have a great need in our state, and we're at the point where we need to fund transportation somehow. The legislature has recognized that need. They've been looking for a way to fund this. For over 6 years, they've been diligently looking at this. They've explored the gas tax. They've explored tolls. They've explored many ways of funding this, and the sales tax is the one that's come out as the most logical thing and the most feasible thing for this point in time. Now, this is a 10-year gas or sales tax, so in 10 years, we've got lots of time to work on other options, other ways of funding this for the future. I think they chose state sales tax also because it does have some exemptions. It does try to minimize the burden on people, even though any tax is a burden, and I agree with that. Raising gas tax could be a bigger burden to a lot of working class people because if you are driving to work, the gas tax would be a burden. Tax issues are difficult. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to everyone's comments on this and to explore this. I think the need is great and the need is well defined. If you look at the project lists that have been provided, if you look at the condition ratings that are available on the websites, you can see that there is a great need and we need to do something. So I'd ask you not to pass this resolution and to consider supporting Amendment 7.
Thank you. All right. Have a nice day. So at this point, I'm finished with speakers. What I am going to do is I'm going to have the Alderman Ogilvie contact me, or Alderman Vaccaro, and we'll set up another date. We do not have a quorum at this point in time to finish this through and see if we can get some more committee members. There's normally, I think it's always an odd number. There's normally, there is 8 on this committee, and I apologize that we don't have them all here today. But we will come back either next week or the week thereafter. Mr. Clerk will work that out. Thank you for coming out today.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Will we then get to be able to close? Because I want to bring up a point about some of these lists of things that they say they're going to do have already been done. So I don't understand how we have a list and the projects have already been done.
No, absolutely. I mean, we can't really do anything that effectively. We've got the list. We'll have people, if you want someone in particular.
No, what I'm saying, like they got Martin King, that's already
What's
been
that?
done. That's $6 million.
I'm sorry. Oh, you needed the sign-in sheet. I'm sorry. You can have all this and your pen. Thank you, everybody.